Jack here, Superintendent of Fauquier County Public Schools, with another edition of One Hard Question. This week's hard question comes from, and there's two different names on here. I'm not sure which is correct. It's a Mara or Nara. But this individual asked a very good question, or it's actually a series of questions. I'll just try to quantify. It says, I received an email asking me as a parent to fill out a satisfaction survey. I was curious what the student survey looked like, so I clicked on the link for the school quality survey for elementary students. The questions all look pretty generic until number 12. Students who misbehave receive consequences. And of course, this survey is a Likert scale, so it goes from strongly agree, agree, neutral, disagree, strongly disagree. The question was, students who misbehave receive consequences. This seems like a question that elementary students shouldn't know the answer to, because if a student with behavior issues are being dealt with on an individual basis and not a blanketed shaming approach, their consequences shouldn't be evident or any of the other students concerned, unless of course there's an altercation on the playground or it directly affects another student. Which leads me to my question, has FCPS come up with a more effective way to redirect the children in the class that are acting outside the set class rules, other than timeout, isolation, public shaming, and whatnot? And then the additional question, are the children that are not excelling with academics and misbehaving, and the children who are excelling but bored and need more of a challenging approach, being disciplined in the same way? If so, is being forced to chant the alphabet when you're ready to read not punishment enough? All right, so lots of questions here. Let me start at the top. The spirit of the question about do students who misbehave receive consequences is really about what students are aware of that they should potentially be aware of, that's within their privy. No, we don't expect students to know what consequences a student who got in a fist fight received, because it's none of their business. What this question is really getting at is, are you as students aware that misbehavior in your classroom is being addressed? Is it being addressed? And so, to your point, it's probably a better idea to edit the question so it asks, is student misbehavior addressed versus do they receive consequences? Because in many cases they shouldn't know what consequences are. But again, the spirit of the question is really about, I'm sorry, my phone keeps ringing. The spirit of the question is really about, is misbehavior in your classroom being addressed by the teacher? Plain and simple. So we ought to maybe edit the question. And by the way, if a student is misbehaving in class and the teacher says, Johnny, stop talking and sit down, that is a consequence. They're being public shaming is the term you use. I don't see it that way at all. It's student redirection. That is a consequence. It's low-level consequence because for some kids it's rather embarrassing to being told to sit, be quiet and sit down, for example. There's much more, extreme consequences for students who fight or, bring drugs to school, whatever. But again, to your point, they're not privy to that. This question is about what are students aware of? Is misbehavior being addressed in the classroom? Yes or no? You agree or you disagree? So that's the answer to that question. The other part of your question is about, what alternatives are being utilized within our classrooms to deal with misbehavior, something more creative than shaming or detention or something. We have a program here in Fauquier County called PBI, which stands for Positive Behavior Intervention. Many of our schools utilize positive behavior intervention. It is what it says. It's a more positive way to discipline students, redirect students, and elicit better, more positive behavior from students. So what I might ask you to do is just simply contact your school's principal and ask them, tell me about your PBI process. What does it look like? How does it manifest itself in the classroom? And they're going to be able to tell you a little bit more about what happens in their schools. Every school goes about it differently. But it is an alternate way of disciplining students. The last part of your question is about students who are struggling and misbehaving versus students who are performing at a high level and misbehaving. Are they punished or disciplined the same way? And isn't a kindergarten student, for example, who is ready to read but has to recite the alphabet, isn't that punishment enough? Point taken. And let me say something to you about this. This is precisely the reason why in the last 3 years I have pushed so hard to expand our Virginia Preschool Initiative program in Fauquier County. I shouldn't really say I because the school board is 100% behind this, as is my senior staff. Because discrepancies in terms of students' access to resources, pre-teaching, the skill sets they bring into kindergarten are never more pronounced than they are with incoming kindergartners. Because if a student is coming into kindergarten with sort of a skill set that is created as a result of parents placing their child in a good preschool program, or reading to their child, or teaching their kids to read. And my wife was a reading teacher. She taught our kids to read before they went to kindergarten. Those kids have a humongous advantage over other kindergarten kids who come in who have not been part of a meaningful preschool program, who perhaps are not part of any preschool program. And if they come in to a kindergarten classroom not knowing their letters, not knowing how to hold a book, in some cases not knowing their last names, these things all happen. There's this huge chasm between those kids and the kids who come in with a skill set. But to your question is like, how do we deal with this? What's the answer? Our kid might, what you're saying in this is my kid is bored. He's a kindergartner. He's ready to read, and he's waiting for these other kids to learn their alphabet. Point taken. We've got to continue to two things. One, we got to continue to expand our VPI program so every single kindergarten student who comes into our classrooms in Fauquier County has had a meaningful preschool program. The second thing we have to do is continue to provide staff development and expectations for our teachers in grades K through 12 that they differentiate for their students. Differentiation is very, very difficult. It's a very difficult thing for teachers to do, especially at the kindergarten level, because there is such a chasm between the skill sets of many incoming students. Differentiation of instruction simply means you're teaching a unit or a subject, a lesson, and you're differentiating the instruction so that the kids who are really excelling are being challenged continually, and the kids who are struggling and not at the same level as the upper level kids, the kids who are struggling, they are challenged also. And that's hard for a teacher to do, but it's imperative. And you pointed out a reason in your question why it is so imperative, because kids get bored and then they act out. And that's a problem we're going to deal with, and we're going to keep dealing with it, and we're going to keep looking to expand the VPI program, and we need your help to do it, because we want to see this. We want to continue to add VPI programs, which is a Virginia Preschool Initiative, every year, continue to expand that program so every incoming student is at the same place. Otherwise, it literally takes them, in many cases, years to catch up to their colleagues who had that good preschool experience. So I hope this was helpful to you. I hope you have a great day.